This video is going to be a very quick snapshot journey through the timeline of EDFD460. So I'm going to start off with the configuration for the weeks, and I've got 14 boxes here that represent the 14 weeks. And so the first 2 weeks are going to be the preparatory learning module, and they run basically from the 7th of February up until the 20th of February. You do have access to these until the 6th of March. But the preparatory learning module weeks are not compulsory, but it's worthwhile giving them a go and having a look at what's in them, because they've got readings about online learning, readings about self-directed learning, and readings about some of the software that we're going to be using, such as Wimber and Wordles. We then have Learning Module 1, then we have Learning Module 2, Learning Module 3, Learning Module 4, and finally we have 2 last weeks of the semester. So we have the preparatory learning module. We have Learning Module 1. We have Learning Module 2. We have Learning Module 3. We have Learning Module 4. And we have the last 2 weeks. The timeline operates from the left of the screen and moves through the semester until we get to the right of the screen. So starting on the left and finishing on the right. First, we have the preparatory learning module. Now, the preparatory learning module runs basically from the 7th of Feb until the 20th of February. But it is available until the 6th of March. And what do you need to be doing in the preparatory learning module? Well, you don't need to be doing anything. The preparatory learning module is voluntary, but you'll find that if you do engage with the content of it, that it'll prepare you really nicely for the rest of the unit. So we basically have a familiarization of the unit. So going through the readings, going through all the different content, it'll give you a really good base for the rest of the unit. We have the readings. These readings talk to you about online learning, they talk to you about the software that we're using, and very importantly, they talk to you about self-directed learning. There's instructions for the setup of Wimber. Now, Wimber is the software we use for the audio functions within this unit, and it's important that you need to set up your computer properly. We also have our very first podcast. So we have the introductory podcast, in which you literally introduce yourselves, and you'll see that there are some guidelines as well. And we also have our etiquette protocol. Now, the etiquette protocol is literally a document that we form as a group, which gives us guidelines as to how to operate within the online learning environment. So once you go into the unit, you'll see that there is a link within the unit content folder that says preparatory learning module. This is what these first 2 weeks are all about. Then we have Learning Module 1. And Learning Module 1 basically starts from the 21st of February and runs through until the 6th of March. So what are you doing in this particular learning module? Well, you're still operating as an individual, but you're beginning to redefine creativity and imagination in education. And you do this in the online discussions, where you start to come together as a cohort of students. So when you look at the preparatory learning modules, you'll see there's some readings by Gilly Salmon, and she gives you 5 steps to the ideal learning environment in terms of e-learning. So what else are you doing in Learning Module 1? You're also going to be starting to form your groups. So learning pods begin to form. And you'll see that when you go into your unit content folder for EDFD460, there's a link that takes you to your learning pod groupings. And once you go in there, you actually select yourself into a group, and you become one of 3 people within a group. And you'll be operating with them in learning modules 2, 3, and 4. So on the 7th of March, you start in Learning Module 2, and this is where you start to really engage in the key content and the key assessment criteria for the unit. So the main thing here is that it runs from the 7th of March until the 27th of March. And what are you doing in this? Well, you're starting off with the content, so you're starting off with the starter wrapper process. And you'll see that there's information about the starter wrapper process, not only in the introduction, but also within the assessment pages as well. So the starter wrapper process is where you begin to engage with the readings in Learning Module 2. The starter will allocate the readings out to the 3 members of the group in an equal fashion, and you start to have these conversations. And these conversations are done in the online discussions, which you're probably very used to. Over the course of the 3 weeks, you synthesize and evaluate the content, and at the end of the 3 weeks, so in this case at the end of Learning Module 2, as you get towards the 27th of March, the wrapper begins to write the transcript, and this is the transcript that is then submitted and also recorded as a podcast. So this is where you have Assessment 1A, and that is submitted by 2 o'clock on Sunday, March the 27th. Learning Module 3 runs from the 28th of March until the 17th of April. And it basically follows the same sort of model as Learning Module 2. So you're still using your starter wrapper process. But the difference here is that the person, for example, who was the starter in Learning Module 2 may now be the wrapper in Learning Module 3. So each person is a starter once within Learning Modules 2, 3, and 4. Each person is a general member once within Learning Modules 2, 3, and 4, and each person is a wrapper within Learning Modules 2, 3, and 4 once. As I said, details are available in the introduction page and also in the assessment pages, and if you ever have any questions, please let me know. So these discussions still go ahead in the online discussions, which you find on Blackboard. And then as you come to the end of Learning Module 3 on the 17th of April, you actually get ready to submit your assessment number 1B, and that's again going to be as a transcript and a podcast and also your Wordle. So by this stage you're really engaging in the content of Learning Module 2, you're pulling that into Learning Module 3 and you're bringing it together. And remember, when you're going through these readings and when you're submitting your transcript at the end and your podcast, I don't want a summary of the readings. This is about you synthesizing and evaluating the content and coming together with your own ideas. I've already read the readings, I don't need them summarized yet again. We then come to Learning Module 4. And Learning Module 4 actually runs from the 18th of April until the 8th of May. And what is really important to remember about this particular learning module is that whilst it looks as though it's 2 weeks, what happens here in between those 2 weeks if we can get this to work, just going to draw an arrow. So in between these 2 weeks, what we actually have is the semester break. Okay, so whilst it looks as though you've got 2 weeks, you do actually have the 3 weeks for that particular learning module. And again, what is happening? You're using the starter wrapper process and online discussions. And this is as with the learning modules 2, 3, and 4, these are the normal text discussions that you have on Blackboard. And at the end of it on the 8th of May, by 2 o'clock, you need to submit assessment number 1C. So that brings to an end the group collaborative assessment task for EDFD460. And that leaves us with our final 2 weeks. And the final 2 weeks are where you have some more assessment and where you're really beginning to bring together the whole unit. So in week number 11, you're going to have assessment number 1D. So I'll just put that in. So here, we're going to have assessment 1D. And assessment 1D is a response, a personal response to learning modules 1, 2, 3, and 4. So a key to getting assessment 1D correct is, or at least giving me an assignment that is rich and deep and meaningful to you, is you don't start it in week 11, you actually start it in learning module 1. So if you have a look at the criteria for assessment number 1D, start working on it as soon as you can. And finally, in week 12, at the very end of the semester, we actually have your individual assignment. And your individual assignment, again, is very important, as with any assessment criteria. So what is your individual assignment going to be about? And when do you actually start engaging with it? Well, it's really important that, as with your assessment 1D, you actually start engaging with this as soon as you can. Okay, so I'm just going to put a label on here, assessment 2. So there's no point in starting your assessment number 2 in either weeks 11 or number 12. You want to be thinking about assessment number 2 in learning module 1, because the content in learning module 1, 2, 3, and 4 heavily informs your individual assignment, which is creating a framework for creativity and imagination in education. So by looking at this timeline, I don't want you to think, here's learning module 1, and right at the end is assessment number 2. I want you to pull assessment number 2 into everything you do for learning modules 1, 2, 3, and 4. And the same with assessment 1D. Okay? It looks as though there's a huge amount of assessment. If you think about it, you're only a wrapper once in learning modules 2, 3, and 4. So that is one assignment that you're responsible for writing and submitting. And then you have these 2 assignments at the end. And assessment number 2, as I just said, needs to be part of everything that you do here. For this to be a successful assessment, and remember, it's not meant to be a successful assessment for me, it's a successful assessment for you. This is your work, your learning, and how it's going to impact on you being a teacher. So if you want to come out with something at the end of this unit that is fulfilling and meaningful, make sure that you embed it in everything you do throughout the semester. So whilst this presentation looks very linear, it's starting from left and it's moving through to the right, just remember that everything is embedded with each other and everything does move in together. In terms of your assessment number 2, I'm very happy to take drafts. So if you want to start, maybe giving me a draft around, towards the end of learning module 3, I'm happy to look at that and give you some pretty concise feedback on it, so that by the time you come to submit at the end of the semester, you've got a really powerful bit of work. The keys to this unit are collaboration. The keys to this unit are self-directed learning. So it's very important that certainly when you're in learning modules 2, 3, and 4, that you are prompt with your responses. That if you're going to have an issue, maybe posting for 2 or 3 days of the week, that you let your fellow learning pod members know. If you let them know, it avoids conflict and it avoids hard feeling. So I hope this has made sense to you, and I hope this has outlined, to an extent what the expectations of the unit are and the timelines are. So if you can stick to these timelines, I know that you'll have a really successful time in EDFD460, and that you'll learn an awful lot from it.